our Deputy Vice Chancellor, Professor Halima, the rep of the DG SEC. Permit me to rest on protocols already established. I have the honor to present a review of this book titled The Living Secret, Endowment for Development in Nigeria, an Ogoni Experiment. A remarkable and courageous work by Professor Magnus Pakol, one of Nigeria's most respected development economists, a former chief economic advisor to President Olusegun Obasanjo, and a long-standing advocate of inclusive development. Having known Professor Pakol both academically and professionally, I can attest that his ideas emerge from decades of scholarship, public service, and a passionate commitment to social justice. This 272-page book, written in elegant and accessible language, offers far more than a regional development proposition. It is a comprehensive philosophy of economic transformation, a moral framework for nation building, and a policy blueprint with implications for Nigeria, Africa, and the broader developing world. Overview of the book's central message. At the core of this book is a bold thesis. Poverty persists, not because societies lack resources, but because people lack legal and practical access to the capital embedded within their natural endowments. The so-called paradox of poverty and plenty in resource-rich countries, Prof argues, is a dysfunction rooted in misgovernance, exclusion, and the systematic detachment of communities from their own wealth. The author proposes a transformative remedy, the full local ownership. So you hear of flow model. Flow model stands for full local ownership, tested through what he calls the Ogoni experiment. The idea is simple yet powerful. Allow communities, beginning with Ogoni, full legal ownership of natural resources located within their land, while maintaining national unity and federal revenue through an 80% tax remitted to the federal government. In other words, people own their resources, the nation maintains oversight, and all parties gain. A win-win situation. This balance of ownership, accountability, and national cohesion is what Professor Pakol calls the living secret. A dynamic, self-renewing principle of development rooted in dignity, justice, and productivity. Structure and content of the book. The book is presented in 20 chapters across 2 major sections, each building a coherent interdisciplinary argument. Section 1, which is the flow model in the context of access to capital, lays the philosophical, historical, and economic foundations of flow. Chapters 1 to 4 revisit the paradox of underdeveloped, resource-rich nations, the legacy of the transatlantic slave trade and colonization, and the historical burden borne by Ogoni communities. These chapters paint a vivid context for understanding how dispossession undermines development. Chapters 5 through 7 present the architecture of the flow model, the creation of the Ogoni Community Development Trust Fund, and the proposed Ogoni Economic Development Corporation, which together form the institutional scaffolding for managing ownership, investment, and community wealth creation. Chapter 8 is particularly insightful, comparing flow to existing mechanisms such as the 13% derivation principle, the Land Use Act, and long-standing MOSOP demands, demonstrating how flow addresses historical grievances while strengthening national stability. Chapters 9 through 13 expand on the moral framework of love thy neighbor as thyself, the necessary legal reforms, the national economic implications, and the potential for scalability across Nigeria and Africa. The first section therefore establishes flow not as a political agitation, I must emphasize, not as a political agitation, but a development strategy anchored in economic rationality and ethical governance. Section 2 is on broadening the lens of governance, poverty, and national development. This section situates flow within broader socioeconomic dynamics. Chapters 14 through 15 diagnose the structural nature of poverty and the corrosive impact of corruption in Nigeria and Africa. Chapter 16 makes an ambitious yet compelling argument that flow can strengthen democracy by deepening accountability and empowering citizens economically. Chapter 17 through 18 highlight the role of global development partnerships and strategic investments, particularly in electricity and infrastructure, as complementarities required to make flow effective. Chapter 19 discusses local government autonomy, tying resource ownership to grassroots governance, and providing comparative perspectives on decentralized development. The last chapter, chapter 20, is a call to action, which concludes the book with a passionate yet measured appeal for reform, an invitation to policymakers, communities, and scholars to embrace innovation in resource governance. This second section, one can say, effectively broadens the book from an Ogoni-specific proposal into a generalizable African development model. Now, what do I consider the strengths of this book? First, it is a bold and original conceptual model. Flow stands out as a well-reasoned, innovative approach to resolving Nigeria's resource governance dilemma. It aims to align ownership with responsibility, productivity with accountability, and local empowerment with national unity. Few development books combine morals philosophy, empirical analysis, and policy design as elegantly as this one. Professor Paco reminds us that development is not merely technical, it is fundamentally about justice and human dignity. The proposed trust fund, development cooperation, and legal reforms are concrete, implementable structures rather than abstract ideas. What do I consider the significance and major contributions of the book? The Living Secret makes significant contributions in several ways. Number one, it reframes Nigeria's resource governance challenges through a fresh community-centered lens. It provides an actionable development model grounded in fiscal realism and moral clarity, and it offers a template that can be adapted by other resource-rich African communities seeking peace, justice, and prosperity. Now, areas for future consideration. Every groundbreaking work, we all know, invites further discourse, and this book is no exception. So in subsequent editions, Prof, I want to recommend that you should explore renewable energy as part of the flow vision, considering global energy transition and its implications for oil-dependent communities. In conclusion, The Living Secret is a timely, insightful, and courageous contribution to the literature on economic development and resource governance. It challenges us to rethink long-held assumptions, to embrace justice as a development imperative, and to recognize that Nigeria's pathway to prosperity lies not abroad, but within its own people and natural endowments. Professor Magnus Knuckle has given us not just a book, but a vision, one that is practical, morally grounded, and rooted deeply in the Nigerian experience. I commend this book wholeheartedly and recommend it to policymakers, academics, development partners, community leaders, and everyone committed to building a more prosperous and equitable Nigeria. The Chairman, Your Royal Majesty, my Vice Chancellor, I thank you all for your attention, distinguished participants.